With the NHL trade deadline rapidly approaching, rumors continue to heat up concerning members of the New York Islanders. Do these rumors make sense, and are these things Lou Lamoriello might do? We've got that and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Gil Martin. I have been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers, dating all the way back from 1972 to the modern era. It's great to have you here to talk a little Islanders hockey, and I'll tell you, right now, we've got a lot to talk about. Trade rumors heating up. The Islanders' backup goaltender situation remains unsettled. And the Four Nations tournament final has been set. We'll talk about how that affects Brock Nelson. Let's start with the trade rumors. And this has been, something that has been buzzed about, a lot of attention so far surrounding Brock Nelson, to a lesser extent, you've got Kyle Palmieri being discussed, and then obviously Noah Dobson. And everydayers will recall, we've broken down all of these different rumors and scenarios because, it makes sense that the Islanders could be looking to move on from some of these guys on expiring contracts, considering where the team is, what their odds are of making the playoffs, what their odds are of actually going on a playoff run if they do get into the playoffs, and, the cap situation, the age of the players, their production. You take all these things into consideration, and it makes sense that the Islanders would be looking to make some moves. But one player who there are some rumors out there that we haven't discussed as much is center J.G. Pageau. And again, when it comes down to this, everydayers, you've heard me say, in the salary cap era, one thing you need to do as a general manager is asset management. And right now, it may very well make a lot of sense to look into trying to move J.G. Pageau. And again, it's not that I don't like J.G. Pageau. It's not that I don't appreciate the different skills he brings to the team. He can kill penalties. He can give you some minutes on the second power play. He's got 10 goals and 27 points in 52 games. Great on faceoffs, 59.7% success rate this season. That would be a new career best, and we know how important faceoffs can be, and they get even more important come playoff time. But here's the other thing about J.G. Pageau. He's 32 years old. He has one more year on his contract after this year, and he carries a cap hit of $5 million. Now, the $5 million cap hit is not, it's a little more probably than what I would want to be paying J.G. Pageau as a third-line center. Now, with the cap going up, maybe it's getting closer to his value, but that's his value this year when he sort of had a bounce-back season. And realistically, again, talking about asset management, Pageau's value probably going to go down before too long as he gets a year older, as maybe he does not have a bounce back year next year. If he goes back to where he was the previous season and isn't as productive, that is certainly something that would make sense, that his value would not be as high in a year as it is now. And Pageau is the kind of player who really can be a great addition for a team that needs one more solid middle six forward. And, Pageau can fill in on the second line or even drop down to the fourth line if you need him to. But he does the little things that you like so much in the playoffs, with the faceoffs, with the responsible play on defense, with the ability to kill penalties and be on the power play, and the ability to be physical when he needs to be. He does have a certain amount of speed as well. So, he is the perfect non-headline making kind of an acquisition that a talented team who's one or two depth pieces away from being a real Stanley Cup contender, or a team that already is a contender and wants to increase their chances of winning it. So there have been some rumors over the last week concerning a couple of Western Conference teams who have inquired about J.G. Pageau. Now, that does not mean Lou Lamoriello is shopping Pageau. Knowing Lou Lamoriello and the way he handles things, he is almost certainly going to want to keep J.G. Pageau. He is a Lou Lamoriello kind of player, top to bottom. But the two teams out there, the Vegas Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Vegas doesn't have a lot of cap space right now, but Shea Theodore, he got injured during the Four Nations tournament, and he has a cap hit of $5.2 million. He is listed as week to week. If he gets placed on LTIR, certainly Vegas would have enough cap space to add J.G. Pageau. And I'll take it a step further. The Islanders may be either looking for a third team to take some salary cap, or the Islanders themselves could take some salary cap, retain some of that cap, and maybe get even more in return for J.G. Pageau. And then, you also have William Karlsson, a center for Vegas, out week to week. We don't know what his timetable is. But again, Pageau would be an upgrade. Now, what the Vegas Golden Knights do not have this year is a first-round pick. They do have a second-round pick and a third-round pick. And we'll see whether or not, you might want to hold on. And, if you want a first-round pick for Pageau, wait until 2026. I wouldn't have a problem with that. That's a deeper draft, a better draft, supposedly. That is another possibility. You could also get second or third round picks, prospects, all different kinds of things in exchange for Pageau. The other team, the Edmonton Oilers, that has allegedly been interested. And, the Oilers, they have four really good centers, natural centers, in Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Adam Henrique. They also do not have a lot of cap space. But, again, you can then put Draisaitl and McDavid on the same line and, create that super line if you add Pageau. The Oilers don't have a second-round pick this year. They do have a third. They also, again, are short on cap space. But depending on how much cap the Islanders may need to retain, or if there were other players involved in the deal going back and forth, you might be able to find a way to make that cap space work. And I think Pageau, on a team with as many offensive weapons as the Edmonton Oilers, might, he might be the perfect addition to shore up their checking and their depth at forward and give them, a guy who can win faceoffs and kill penalties and try to shut down the opposition's better forwards. He'd be a perfect playoff piece, and he wouldn't necessarily be a rental. He'd have one more year on his deal. All of these things taken into consideration. I do not think Lou Lamoriello is going to want to trade Pageau. And if the Islanders are still in contention, and Lou Lamoriello's definition of contention may be different from yours and mine, but if they are still in contention for a playoff spot, you get the feeling he will be very reluctant to deal Pageau, a guy who he rightfully views as a very valuable player. But if the Islanders are long shots to make the playoffs, and remember, the computer model at The Athletic said they had a 26% chance just to make the playoffs, and then they would be facing, your Floridas, your Torontos, your Washingtons, your Carolinas in the first round, and it wouldn't get any easier. You'd constantly be playing the best available team remaining in the next round. So if the playoffs are a long shot, you have 1 year left on Pageau's deal, you could free up $5 million or even $4 million in cap space, depending on if you have to retain salary, add a prospect or a pick or a player. It would make sense for the long-term benefit of this team to trade J.G. Pageau while his value is as high as it is. It's not likely to get higher. We heard rumors last year that Pageau, that Lou was offered a number 1 pick for Pageau. He turned it down. He probably isn't getting a first-round pick this year, probably not ever, but that value, he could probably get a number 2 pick or a prospect or a player who's younger. That value is only going to go down the older Pageau gets. If he's not enjoying as good a season as he's enjoying this year, there are a lot of factors involved here, but it makes sense if you get a firm offer to trade Pageau at the deadline this year. Again, not a knock on J.G. Pageau. It's more of a statement of where the Islanders are right now and where they need to be in a year, 2 years, etc. All right, we have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We're going to talk about the Islanders' backup goaltending situation, plus Four Nations final is set. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, we've got a winger from Saskatchewan who played for the Islanders in the mid to late 2000s and early 2000 teens. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by SelectQuote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Stanley Cup. Well, the same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million. No medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you might think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance policy for you for less at SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. So Backup goalies. Yeah. All right. I'm going to put it this way. The Islanders still have a lot of uncertainty behind Ilya Sorokin right now. And it's a problem because we saw last season, and everydayers know we've talked about this earlier in the year. If Ilya Sorokin gets overworked, he can wear down. And last year, the last 8-10 games of the regular season and into the playoffs, Sorokin was not up to the task. Now, whether it was because of his back that later required surgery, whether he was exhausted, whether it's some combination of the two, you don't want to run your star goalie and your best player into the ground so that he's not capable of helping your team down the stretch. And you know what? If you have to play your goalie every game for the rest of the year or close to it, if there's 27 games left and you've got to play 23 of them with Ilya Sorokin, you might make the playoffs if he holds on that long, but he may have nothing left in the tank by the time you get there. The original backup goalie, obviously, was Semyon Varlamov. But Varley, he has not played a game since November 29th. And he has not skated with the team or practiced, as far as we know, since early January. So he is not, there's no timetable yet for Varlamov's return. It is possible he will not be back this season, although, again, this being the New York Islanders and Lou Lamoriello, we are told as little as possible, and we do not have specifics. Then you have Marcus Hogberg, who played really, really well when he got called up by the New York Islanders. A 1.45 goals against average, a 9.47 save percentage. But he got injured back on January 25th. Looked like it was a hand injury. He finished regulation, but pulled himself before overtime and ended up being placed on IR. Now, he will not be back most likely until right around the NHL trade deadline, which is on March the 7th. Keep in mind where we're at, though, between now and March the 7th. The New York Islanders have 6 games left. And there's one back-to-back, and then the 7th is the trade deadline. The 8th and the 9th is another back-to-back, and then there's another game on the 11th. So you've got to deal with, all of that, and that's a West Coast road trip as well, at San Jose, at Anaheim, at LA. So you're going to need a backup goalie. And no offense to Jakub Skarek, I just don't think he's ready. He played the one game. He gave a valiant effort, but gave up 5 goals, has an 8.44 save percentage, struggled, in Bridgeport. Obviously not a good team in front of him there, but overall, here is a situation where the Islanders need a backup goalie. And if they know more about Hogberg's situation than we do, if the situation is worse and he is coming back well after the trade deadline, that's a big problem. If he's coming back at the trade deadline, I still would not be thrilled with having Sorokin play all of the games between now and the trade deadline, including the back-to-back on March 3rd and 4th. The trade deadline is coming. I am not saying that the New York Islanders should go out there and break the bank, but I am saying that adding a serviceable goalie who can give you, 8 or 9 starts between now and the end of the season, or 3 or 4 or 5 starts before either Varlamov, if he does come back, Hogberg, if he does come back, if either one of them are ready, before the end of the season, you still need somebody to hold down the fort between now and then. Bring me in an experienced NHL backup. There are guys out there. There are guys in the minors who would be a step up, who probably would not cost much of anything. And I'm not saying you keep these players or you build around them in the future, but as a stopgap, it certainly would make a certain amount of sense. And I'm just going to call out some names, guys who I think it would cost next to nothing to acquire. Tristan Jarry, for example, up and down in the minors, might make sense to add him for a couple of games. Guys who have just absolutely not been able to really consistently play. Philip Grubauer, maybe you might be able to add, as things have not worked out great for him in Seattle. If there is a trade, for example, involving J.G. Pageau to head to Edmonton, let's say, Edmonton has, a backup goalie right now in Calvin Pickard, who, again, not a world beater, but a respectable, solid NHL backup goalie who, especially in my mind, if you're not going to get Hogberg back or Varlamov back, adding a guy like that would make a lot more sense. It gives the team a chance to not run your starting goalie and Ilya Sorokin into the ground. And let's face it, if you need to play your starting goalie all that, almost every game between now and the end of the year, when it's 27 games, he is not going to have anything left in the tank come playoff time. If you get into the playoffs, it is not the best strategy for the Islanders. They need to find a backup goalie. You don't need to break the bank. It doesn't need to be a big cap hit. It just needs to be a serviceable, solid hockey goalie who can play somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 games and be there until either Varlamov or Hogberg return. All right, more to get to on today's show. The Four Nations finale is set. It's going to happen Thursday. We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we now know. We now know who's going to be in the Four Nations Challenge final on Thursday. And it's going to be the game that people in North America, or most people in North America, were looking forward to. And that is Team USA, which clinched the berth Saturday when they beat Team Canada, and Team Canada, who clinched their trip to the final when they beat Finland 5-3 on Monday afternoon during the President's Day matinee. So this one's going to be good. It's in Boston. It's Thursday night, and Sweden will face Finland in, if there's a consolation game. But for the final, for the Four Nations title, it's going to be Team USA against Team Canada. And we saw how intense and how spirited that matchup was on Saturday. 3 fights in the first 9 seconds of the game, but it's not just the fight. It's the checking. It's the intensity. It's the fans in Montreal booing the American national anthem. There's just so much going on right now between these two countries, and I am looking forward to seeing that finale on Thursday night. And by the way, Brock Nelson again played for Team USA on Monday evening when they took on Sweden, and he wore an A as an alternate captain on his jersey. Again, clearly, a lot of respect for Brock Nelson from Bill Guerin, who's the general manager of Team USA, who also happens to be the general manager of the Minnesota Wild, one of the teams that Brock Nelson is rumored, to have interest in Brock Nelson come trade deadline time. So keep your eyes on that. It should be interesting. I'll tell you, compared to a regular All-Star game, this Four Nations tournament has been a smashing success, a lot more entertaining, a lot better quality hockey. The players have bought in, and it's been a very pleasant surprise in my mind. All right, time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today is the 39th birthday of former Islanders winger Blake Como. The Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan native, 6'1", 200 pounds, a second-round pick of the Islanders back in 2004. Made his NHL debut with the Isles in 06-07, became a regular the following year in 07-08. His best year with the Islanders, 2010-2011, 24 goals, 46 points, and 43 penalty minutes. He later played for the Flames, the Blue Jackets, the Penguins, the Avalanche, the Stars, hung up his skates after the 2021-2022 season, played in 909 career NHL games, 141 goals, 334 points, 573 penalty minutes, add 6 goals, 12 points in 53 Stanley Cup playoff games, none of those, unfortunately, with the New York Islanders. One of his better games as an Islander, October 11th, 2010, at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. The Islanders and the Rangers facing off in this one. It's Henrik Lundqvist in goal for the Rangers, Rick DiPietro in goal for the Islanders. Our Islanders' birthday of the day, Blake Como, gets the scoring started at the 12:47 mark of the first period. Unassisted, his second goal of the year. When Brandon Dubinsky ties it on the power play for the Rangers, Blake Como goes back to work. He sets up Josh Bailey, Mike Motto with the other assist, and all of a sudden it is a 2-1 Islanders lead after one. The Rangers took a 3-2 lead. Then the Islanders tied it on a goal by Matt Molson, so it's 3-3 after 40 minutes. And then the Rangers took a 4-3 lead on a goal by Artem Anisimov. And that's when the Islanders come back. P.A. Parenteau ties it with 4.5 minutes left in the game. And then our Islanders' birthday of the day, Blake Como, he comes through with Mark Stahl in the box for high sticking. He scores the game-winning goal. Josh Bailey, Mike Motto, the assist, an empty netter by Franz Nielsen clinches it. Islanders beat the Rangers by a score of 6-4 for Blake Como, 2 goals, an assist. He's a +3, and he had 4 shots on goal and potted the game winner, playing 20 minutes and 27 seconds of ice time. Nice game for Rick DiPietro, 29 saves to earn the win, but Blake Como, he is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we are back tomorrow. We will have our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders. We'll talk a little bit about some of the Islanders' college prospects as well. And don't forget, we will have a special guest coming up on Thursday. And I'm lining up another guest for next week if I can pull it off. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, shoot us an email at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR vs NYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis. It's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.